Good morning, everyone. We will get started in just a few minutes as we allow for more attendees to join the call. Okay, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Brian Bishop. I am from Strategic Relations and Communications, and I am going to be your moderator during today's town hall. Our focus today is to discuss ongoing developments in graduate education and to take questions from students, faculty, and staff on any issues of concern. To streamline our process for asking questions, we ask that you please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. If you'd rather submit a question in writing, please do so using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to call on as many people with raised hands as we can. Then we will go to the written questions. Today's town hall will be recorded and will be posted on the graduate school website. To begin, let me introduce today's panel. First, we have Graduate School Dean Scott Adler, Senior Assistant Graduate School Dean Gretchen O'Connell, Associate Vice Chancellor and Dean of Students J.B. Banks, Senior Vice Provost and Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Planning and Assessment Catherine Eggert, Chief Operating Officer Patrick O'Rourke, and finally, Provost Russell Moore. And now I'd like to turn it over to Graduate School Dean Scott Adler for his opening remarks.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, all. Welcome to the Graduate School Town Hall. I'm Scott Adler, Dean of the Graduate School, and I want to thank you for attending today. Since I became Dean of the Graduate School, it really has been a priority for me to share with you the progress and the goals of transforming graduate education here at CU Boulder. And you can see the goals that we've laid out for the graduate school in our just finalized strategic plan, which is posted on the graduate school's website. So I urge you to read it and let me know if you have any thoughts on it. Today, we'd like to have a discussion and a question and answer session to address the concerns and issues of our graduate school community. And I first, of course, want to thank my partners in working to transform the graduate experience here, the folks to whom you were just introduced. These are the people that I lean on a daily basis to help provide for the needs of our graduate students and our graduate programs. So I'm grateful that they were able to make the time today. A quick note, the town hall serves two basic functions. It's an opportunity for the leadership of the graduate school and the university to hear from students, faculty, staff about their experiences in graduate education here. It also serves as Provost Moore's open forum for the graduate school for the fall semester. So now I'm going to turn it back to Brian, who will review the procedures for the morning town hall.
Thank you, Dean Adler. We will do our best to get through as many questions as we can. Please use the raised hand function at the bottom of your screen today. I will call on you and direct the question to the appropriate expert on our panel to help with the answer. After we've gotten through all of the questions from the raised hands, we'll go to the questions that have been submitted in the question and answer channel. With that, let's begin with the first question. So, if anybody has a question, please use the raised hand function. All right. First, we have Meredith Canode. I'm going to allow you to talk. Meredith, thank you so much for having a question. Please go ahead.
Yes, hi. I had a question in regard to, I know there have been some movements around housing and finding affordable housing and buying up property. Provost had mentioned that at a meeting pre-pandemic. And I know the pandemic sort of rocked everything, but I just wanted to see if there's been any movement with that, or what sort of the effort is to kind of work out the making housing a little bit more affordable for students, because I know that's a big concern.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. I believe that might be going to JB, Dean of Students.
I didn't really hear her question. I'm sorry.
I didn't.
I think I heard something about housing. Maybe I don't know. I don't want to misrepresent. So
Can you hear me better now?
yes.
My apologies. I just was asking, I know the provost had done some work or had been talking about there being some effort to buy property to sort of make housing more affordable for graduate students and for student life. And I know there had been some effort about that pre-pandemic. And I just wondered, I know the pandemic rocked everything quite a bit, but as to where we were with that as far as housing, as Boulder costs are going up and all that.
Yeah, I can take the first stab. Provost can certainly jump in. Thank you for that question. Yeah, those conversations are ongoing. We recognize that our graduates and other students, for that matter, have been having some concerns about affordable housing. It's just not about our graduate students. It's about just in general. At Boulder can be a pretty expensive place to live. So that's one of our priorities, is to produce a larger stock of affordable housing for our graduate students. And I've been in some of those conversations to date. It is not a forgotten topic, and it is something that we're certainly working on to make sure that we're able to recruit and retain the best graduate students that we possibly can. We recognize that housing is one of those reasons why folks will come here and be successful.
Great, thanks so much.
Yeah, I can also add to that answer a little bit. Two things. Meredith, you are correct. So when the pandemic hit, a lot of the conversations that were ongoing with different municipalities regarding the possibility of acquiring land to either build things or just acquiring housing, those pretty much came to a screeching halt because everybody's focus, including the municipalities, was focused on trying to get through the crisis period of the pandemic. So we will probably reinitiate those discussions now that we're getting more into a COVID management phase. But I might also ask COO O'Rourke to briefly comment. Members of his team will soon be rolling out a campus master plan. So that should be coming in the coming months. And I think what you'll see in there are accommodations for graduate student housing. Unfortunately, that won't be in the months or even a year range, but we do have plans to accommodate more housing.
So I can jump in there, Russ, thanks, which is, you actually just said what I was going to say, which is that our facilities and infrastructure team has been working to try to identify what the campus needs are for the upcoming years. One of the things that we've recognized is that COVID means we have to rethink how we're thinking about space. We'll probably need less administrative space and less office space, but it won't mean that we need less housing that is available either for graduate students or undergraduate, so that the master plan that's being developed will be addressing that and making it a place where we will be building. The other thing that you may have seen is that we recently went through with the city of Boulder and they approved an annexation agreement for our property at CU South Boulder. There's still some hurdles that we have to get through, but that we've committed to, that the primary usage of that property is going to be for housing for upper division students, faculty, and staff and graduate students. So this is something that we've recognized the challenges of being able to live in Boulder either, and to be able to work and study in the environment in which we exist. And so we're working on that. We don't have any immediate ability to expand our housing stock, but it's something we're working on.
Perfect. Thank you all for your answers. And I guess now, Meredith, thank you so much for that question. Does anybody else have any questions? If you would like to raise your hand, please do so. I don't see any more raised hands, but I do have a question that has come through the Q&A. And that question, let me see real quick. Bear with me, guys. All right, so how about this? One thing we've been hearing is that some graduate students are worried about the Delta variant as we head into the winter. We've been asked, why can't I have the choice to teach my spring semester class in the way that makes sense for me the safest? I would like to have Catherine Eggert answer this if she can.
Thank you for that question. And I want to first address the reason that we as a campus have moved back towards in-person teaching. And for spring, campus-wide, about 93% of our classes at the last time I looked at it are scheduled to be in person. So the main thing to know, and COO O'Rourke can help me with the health-related plans here, is that the decision to return to in-person teaching was not made lightly. It was in fact made on the basis of recommendations from our science team, who have been guiding our efforts all along and who have helped make it the case that we have not had a single case of COVID transmission traced to the classroom. That is to say, we don't have any known cases where COVID was transmitted in the classroom so far. So we've been doing really well. And the reason we're going to be and are doing even better is the high vaccination rate on campus. Because of the vaccination mandate, we're seeing vaccination rates at around 95% for our campus community. And that is a tremendous development and has made it possible, you know, with our layered mitigation efforts to see our classrooms as really kind of the safest place to be in Boulder. We have the classrooms are ventilated, that we have the masking requirement currently in place. And so that, I know it can seem very, very strange to just walk into a class and teach in person. I've been doing it myself this semester, but the confidence is there from our science team that this is a safe thing to do. The second thing to know is that graduate students and faculty and all of our instructional personnel, including our part-time lecturers, faculty of all ranks, instructors, and tenured and tenure track faculty, are all being treated in the same way. That is to say, we are asking the departments and programs to identify classes that can be taught remote for one of two reasons. There is, first of all, considerable student demand for that class to be taught remotely. We have experience now from the pandemic about which classes our students do want, you know, at least a significant proportion of them want it to be taught remotely. And the second is it pedagogically appropriate to teach that class remotely? Some of our classes do not work at all in remote form. Others, maybe the instructor has found it works even better to be taught in remote form. So that's how the spring semester class schedule has been planned. And the class schedule, as you probably know, has been released. Students begin to register on November 1st, I believe is the date. And we are committed to offering those classes in the mode in which they are being listed in the classroom schedule. Did you have anything to add about the health and safety aspects of that question?
Very briefly, as Catherine mentioned, we've been able to do much better than some of the other surrounding communities, in large part due to a couple of things. Number one is the high vaccination rate that we have amongst our campus community. And as Catherine said, we're running at about 95% on that across all of our populations. The second is that, notwithstanding the fact that Boulder County Public Health considers us to be a fully vaccinated facility, we've put in the masking requirements for the fall in order to help reduce transmission. And given the levels that we're seeing in the surrounding community, we anticipate having those in place through the fall semester and then evaluating where we are. But if we continue to believe that there's a potential risk of transmission within the community, that's something that we won't hesitate to extend. And those have served us well. Probably the most important number that I look at to be able to tell whether or not we've got an ongoing challenge within our community where we might have to rethink how we're operating is based upon our positivity rates. And even though the positivity rates for testing in the community remain in that between 3 and 5% range, we're consistently seeing our campus positivity rate at 1% or below, which shows us that we've had really effective means of being able to limit disease transmission, and that we've created probably a safer place on campus than we have in the surrounding community. So I don't want to discount people's concerns, but also want to make sure that people know that due to the combination of measures and really the fact that people, like everybody on the call, have been vigilant in taking care, the teaching environment and the working environment have proven to be remarkably safe. So thanks.
Okay, next question. What plans are in the works to reduce and eliminate student fees for graduate student workers? I believe we're going to go to Scott for this one.
Yeah, I'll take that. Thanks, Brian. So, of course, student fees remain a very high priority for campus conversations around the budget. And as many of you know, the budget is a big part of what we're talking about this year. Not only is it an ongoing issue, but of course, with the budget redesign. The task force report, which was completed a little over 2 years ago, done with the graduate school in conjunction with the GPSG, the Graduate and Professional Student Government, still remains a live report. It guides a lot of our decision-making regarding compensation for graduate students. So we've made some progress on fees, dental insurance, et cetera. And that still is guiding us. I really hope we're going to be able to make some progress on this very soon.
Thank you so much, Dean Adler. Next question is coming through. Let's see. From the last 2 years, graduate housing prices have gone up by 5 to 7%, but graduate stipends have been stagnant. Are there any plans to address this disparity? I believe this can go directly to Scott, maybe supported by COO O'Rourke.
Of course, the financial crisis over the last year and a half certainly paused any conversation about increases both for salaries for faculty and stipends for graduate students. As the new COO O'Rourke can talk about the budget going forward, but as we begin to get into a new budget cycle and consider where we are with respect to our campus-wide budget, we would talk about the possibility of stipend increases. But right now we're still looking at a post-pandemic, sorry, we're not post-pandemic, but a pandemic budget for the moment. I don't know if Pat, you have more to add on that.
So I would add that during the course of the pandemic, we had a number of cycles where we were not able to look at merit increases or salary increases for almost all of our community, with the exception that we were able to raise the minimum wage on campus for some of our hourly workers. As we are emerging on this, that we are going to be continuing to look at the combination of things that affect the graduate students. That includes the stipends that are made available, as well as addressing the topic that we looked at before, which are the fees that get charged to graduate students. Ultimately, our goal is to be able to come up with a package of recommendations that would relieve some of those financial pressures, and also to be able to look at the benefits that are available to be able to come up with what makes sense. So I can't say I know what the proposal is going to be, but it's probably going to be a combination of continuing to look at the stipends themselves in order to be able to meet those inflationary pressures, trying to reduce fees over time to be able to relieve those financial burdens, and making sure that the benefits are available to be able to provide the type of protections that the graduate students need in order to be able to provide for themselves and their families. So those are part of our current budget discussions. Those have to be informed by, as we're emerging from the pandemic, where the campus sustained over $200 million worth of revenue losses during that term. We're now building back and evaluating what our budgetary future is going to be. Our enrollment in the fall was actually a bit stronger than we had projected. So that's good news for the future. And we're also seeing things like increased applications that are coming through the portal for next year. So there's reason to believe that we've got reason to be optimistic, but we don't want to make commitments until we're sure we have the budget to be able to sustain them.
Yeah, and if I can jump in on this answer as well, as Dean Adler alluded to in the task force report, we'll highly prioritize efforts to increase stipends and reduce fees, all of which would help improve the graduate students' bottom line. And I do want to emphasize that through our work over the last 5 or 6 years with UGS and now GPSG, we've been able to move our stipends from well below the AAU public average to significantly above the AAU average. I recognize the cost of living here is very, very high, but through our partnership with GPSG now, given the history we've had over the last 5 years, I'm confident that as resources become available, that we'll continue to direct them and align them with the priorities in the graduate task force report. Unfortunately, we can't do everything all at once, but we have been making significant progress over the last number of years through our great partnership with GPSG and formerly UGS. So I think that gives us reason to hope that in the near future, we'll be able to chip away at some of the issues that are really cutting into the graduate students' bottom lines.
Thank you both so much for the answers. The next question is, what were the considerations when creating and administering the campus culture survey? How are the data collected through the survey any different from data that are already collected by offices like OIEC, OVA, etc.? I would like to have both Provost Russell Moore as well as COO of Work answer this. Russ, if you can get us started.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. And I'm really glad we got the question, because there tends to be some confusion around all the surveys that occur on campus. So for starters, the campus culture survey is being conducted in a period starting last week all the way well into November, and we're not allowing other campus surveys to occur at this time to avoid the confusion that often arises when we do conduct surveys. This survey is somewhat different based on experiences we've had on conducting past similar surveys. But I think what's going to be really important when we disseminate the results of these surveys, not only will the results be disseminated to the respective units on campus, but we'll also be providing credible and significant recommendations for how to respond to different kinds of results that might show up in a unit's data. So I think we can look forward to seeing a better chance for improvement of campus culture. In 2017, we piloted that paradigm where we disseminate results coupled with recommendations for how to address the results. And that proved to be very, very successful and statistically significant improvements in campus culture in the units where we piloted that approach. So I think this survey is more focused. And what I'm excited about, once again, is that when the results are disseminated, we have a higher likelihood of having actionable reactions to those data to improve our lot on campus.
I can add a little bit in talking about the survey that we conducted at the end of spring term last year, the Grad Suru survey, which is a different survey. It was done of all graduate students on campus. We got the data back in late summer. We're in the process of putting those data in a form that will be usable publicly. So we're going to release those data, I believe, by the end of the semester, but after the climate survey is done. As Provost Moore said a moment ago, we don't want to confuse people with a dump of data, survey data in the middle of another big survey. And part of this is, of course, a bigger effort to make sure that we are making data-informed, information-informed decisions about our graduate programs, graduate students, support, community building, transforming the graduate education experience from what we learn from the students. So it's very important that we get responses, both to the Suru survey that we did, and we'll continue, I believe, every 2 years, and of course the climate survey right now. These are very, very important because they do help to inform the decisions that we make and the priorities that we have. So we're looking forward to having a conversation about what we learned from Grad Suru, and of course in the spring about what we'll learn from the climate survey. So I hope that everyone takes a few minutes to make sure that they fill out those surveys.
The only thing that I would add is there was a question about how this is different from some of the other surveys that have been administered by OIUC, or the data that gets collected by those organizations on as part of their duties, rather through OVA or through OIUC. And it's important to remember that most of the work that is done by OIUC is driven by a complaint having been made about someone who has said, I've been the subject of some type of discrimination, which allows them to be able to follow up on that complaint. What we're really interested in knowing here is not just whether or not people have experienced something that might be an act of discrimination, but really trying to get beneath what's the culture of the institution. Where are people experiencing things that might interfere with their ability to work effectively? Some of the questions we have in there are, if someone's experienced an instance of incivility, is that a faculty to faculty interaction? Is that a faculty to student interaction? Is that a faculty to staff interaction? Trying to understand really how people's experience is being lived within the institution. Because offices like OIUC, they go through and that they are able to look for things like a policy violation. But we don't want to just address those things that violate policy. We really want to be in a position to understand where are our opportunities to make the campus more inclusive and more equitable. And the best way for us to be able to do that is to be able to sample the experience of our entire population and be able to look for what are the things we can do that are going to result in the most positive benefit. And so really what we're trying to do here is to be able to encourage a broad look at not just what an individual experience is, but what the intersectionality is between different populations, because that really gives us the ability to think about what's going to make a difference. And so if the people on this call, if you could please take the survey yourself, as well as encourage others to do it, because it's going to be something that's going to give us insight. And it's going to be able to give us the ability to, over time, determine what type of things are working and what type of things aren't. And we've occasionally fallen victim to not being able to collect that ongoing data and being able to assess where our institutional progress lies, but this is really an effort to commit to doing that better.
Thank you all for that answer. I see that we do have one more person who has raised their hand to ask a question. Corey, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to talk. Feel free to ask your question.
Thanks. Thank you all for having this town hall. This is really meaningful that you're opening yourselves up for questions from us. I'm a PhD student in the mechanical engineering department, and my question is about a well-rounded education. So at least in my department, I feel like we're really developed as researchers, but if we're looking for faculty positions, we are evaluated on not just research, but also teaching and service. And yet we don't have a lot of avenues to develop those skills. What resources are there on campus, or what resources are being developed to help us to have a more well-rounded education?
I'll take that. Thanks, Corey. Appreciate the question. This is definitely a priority for us in the graduate school. We're one of the things that we're taking out of that strategic plan, a bunch of priorities, mentoring and the relationship between advisors and advisees is a big priority for us this year. And part of that is we want to work with things like CTL, the Center for Teaching and Learning on campus, to create more opportunities for graduate students to get additional training on teaching, because as you pointed out, a good percentage, in fact, a very high percentage of our PhD students will go on to jobs in academia. And so we had hoped to start that a little sooner. The pandemic diverted us a bit because, of course, CTL was trying to adjust to the new modalities for teaching last year. We have a little more breathing room. We're going to try and have those conversations. I'd like to get more students going through the seminars and workshops in CTL to get that training, to help them get things like micro-credentials and the ability to get some knowledge about how to be better instructors in a college classroom, because for a lot of you, that's going to be very, very important. So we're going to try and do some of that centrally on campus. Of course, where departments try and do some of this on their own. We're going to see if we can coordinate a bit with some of the departments as well on this. But yeah, it's a big priority for making sure that students get that additional training beyond being in the lab or doing research, but some training with the teaching that they're eventually going to do.
Thanks.
I'll just jump in and piggyback quickly on that. I do recommend that any graduate student, any faculty member, anybody who's teaching on campus or is interested in teaching, check out the Center for Teaching and Learning website. They have tremendous programming that is expanding all the time, and they have just launched a couple of micro-credentials that are for everybody, including graduate students. One is on teaching international students, and the other one is on just and equitable teaching.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you all for these questions. I think we have one more final question that just came through, and it is regarding the campus culture survey. How did you balance the potential of re-traumatizing the survey taker with the potential benefits of the survey results? What mental health professionals were consulted in the creation of this survey? I think I'm going to pass this along to Provost Moore and COO O'Rourke.
Yep, so I'll briefly jump in on this one. So a fairly large and comprehensive team of individuals from a variety of groups, including OIC, OVA, some our student affairs colleagues were involved in the development and creation of the survey. One thing that you'll see in this survey is there isn't an opportunity for the provision of narrative feedback. So to the questioner's point, one of the things that ended up happening when we did provide narrative feedback years gone by often triggered an obligation to report. And in that case, that often had the potential to result in re-traumatization of folks who were trying to provide input for the survey when in fact the way the survey was designed, it created an unintended consequence to the survey takers. So a whole lot of time and effort has been spent on making sure that the results are fastidiously anonymized, and also to make sure that we're not triggering obligations to report through the survey so that we don't create the unintended consequence of re-traumatization.
The only thing that I would add is that to build on what Russ said, I don't have much more to add about the development of the survey. He covered that well, but to encourage people, if they are experiencing any type of traumatization from having taken the survey itself, to please reach out to either CAPS, OVA, and to be able to seek support. There is institutional benefit for us to be able to understand what's going on in our community. That goes with a corresponding obligation for us to be able to care for those members within our community who are experiencing some type of trauma. So please, if you're experiencing anything, please utilize those resources that are available so that the individual can get the care that they need.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. I'd like to turn it back over to Dean Adler now for closing.
Oh, well, we just saw one more question. If we can take this last question.
Absolutely. I am going to allow them to talk right now. Go ahead, ask your question.
Hi, my question is regarding international students. And this is a question that a lot of international students have in my batch. So basically 2021 onwards, as per the new CPT rule, international students will have to pay a 3-credit course tuition fees and student fees to be able to be allowed to do internships. And because of this, basically my friends who did a summer internship in summer 2021 had to pay like $4,900 to be able to do internship, which did not require any university resource, say for example, classrooms or class meetings with other students or professors. And that was like 1 month's salary for my friend. So I was just wondering, what's the justification behind having students pay $4,900 to be able to work in the summer? Yeah, this year onwards, basically.
So Upasana, is that your name? Is that how you pronounce your name?
Yeah, Upasana.
Upasana, thank you. So I don't know that I have an answer to your question, and I think this might be better if you send us an email on this, and we can get a better answer for you. I'm not sure I know the answer, and I don't want to try and ad-lib this one.
Okay.
All right. It doesn't seem like we have any more questions, so we might end it here. I want to thank you all for coming to the town hall today, and thank you for your questions. You can always reach us in the graduate school at gradinfo at colorado.edu. You can also email questions to me if anything comes to mind after this. Of course, I want to thank all of our panelists for your time today and your support of the graduate school and our graduate students.
Scott, could I just mention one last thing on the culture survey? Which is there is for anyone who's taking it, a link to both OIEC and OVA in the email for the culture survey. So if anybody needs to access, that's a good link to be able to get there.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for your cooperation today and your time. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.